Found a friend in Jesus, he's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. The lily of the valley, in him alone I see. All I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. In sorrow he's my comfort, in trouble he's my stay. He tells me every care on him to roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He all my grief has taken, and all my sorrows borne. In temptation, he's my strong and mighty tower. I have all for him forsaken, and all that I was sworn. Left my heart, and now he keeps me by his power. Oh, all the world forsake me, and Satan tempt me sore. Through Jesus I shall safely reach the goal. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000, my soul. Never, never leave me, nor yet forsake me here, while I live by faith and do his blessed will. Oh, all the fire about me, I've nothing now to fear. With his vanity, my hungry soul shall fill. In sweeping of the glory, to see his blessed face, where rivers of delight shall ever roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. Okay, this next one is on page 257. Won't it be wonderful there? When with the Savior we enter the glory land, won't it be wonderful there? Ended the troubles and cares of the story land, won't it be wonderful there? Won't it be wonderful there? Having no burdens to bear, joyously singing with heart dissolving. Oh, won't it be wonderful there? Walking and talking with priceless eternal one, won't it be wonderful there? Praising, adoring the matchless eternal one, won't it be wonderful there? Won't it be wonderful there? Having no burdens to bear, joyously singing with heart dissolving. Won't it be wonderful there? There where the tempest will never be sweeping us, won't it be wonderful there? Sure that forever the Lord will be keeping us, won't it be wonderful there? Won't it be wonderful there? Having no burdens to bear, joyously singing with heartfelt salvation. Won't it be wonderful there?
Are we doing all this to stay? That's what my son says.
Because we have a work a lot of time.
That's it, choose.
We're preparing. Every day. Jesus said, occupy till I come. Let's say something else. Number 12. I don't know, it's Amazing Grace. I should know that by now.
Sing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace appeared, the hour I first believed. Many dangers, sorrows, and snares I have already known. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, like shining as the sun, we know that's safe to sing God's praise. And when we first begun, praise God, 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 praise God. Battles over, we shall wear the crown. Oh, we shall wear the crown. Oh, we shall wear the crown. And when the battle's over, we shall wear the crown in the new Jerusalem. Wear a crown, wear a crown, wear a bright and shining crown. And when the battle's over, we shall wear a crown in the new Jerusalem. Well, praise the Lord. We are going to launch today from 1 Kings chapter 20, verse number 34. As we're moving through this part of the Old Testament in our study of covenant, quite often we find that the references to covenant have to do with covenants made between man and covenants made between men and covenants made between nations, and many times these covenants that are referred to, like this one here, is a covenant that was wicked people making covenant with each other to continue to harm and hurt the children of God, the children of Israel. Verse 34 says, "And Ben-Hadad said unto him, The cities which my father took from thy father I will restore, and thou shalt make streets for thee in Damascus, and thou shalt make streets for thee in Damascus, and my father, as my father made in Samaria." And then said Ahab, we all know who Ahab is, right? "I will send thee away with this covenant." So he made a covenant with him and sent him away. These covenants between nations here, represented by the leaders of these nations, were those arrangements that had been made that were just exploiting the children of Israel. And, Ahab, it's recorded in God's Word that Ahab was as wicked as any king that they ever had. And Ahab just didn't seem to care if the whole nation, the 10 tribes of Judah, he didn't care if all the people in that nation followed him in his sinful ways, in his wicked ways. Even though he was the leader of Judah, he was not mindful of the spiritual needs, and he wasn't mindful of God's covenant that God had made. Now, the reason I'm touching on every aspect, Old Testament, whether it's a positive thing about about God's covenant that he made with the children of Israel, but we're also covering all these covenants that were made between individuals. Some of these covenants between individuals were very profitable to both individuals as far as the protection for their lives. One of my favorite covenants that I come across is the covenant between David and Jonathan, and how that they covenanted with each other. And even though Saul being Jonathan's father, he was out to destroy David, that covenant that he made, he kind of gives us insight into what a covenant is supposed to be, even when it's just between you and I, or any individuals. Certain aspects of covenant are grossly misunderstood, especially in our generations, because most of our understandings or our definitions, let's say, of covenant really aren't covenant at all. They're really just understandings of contracts. And with contracts, you're entering into an agreement that you will do this and the other party will do that, whatever the exchange might be. And if either party doesn't perform up to the contract, then the contract can be null and void. Covenants are not performance-based. They're based in the commitment that we make to another individual, and that individual makes to us. And like Jonathan and David, their covenant between each other, everything that David owned, everything that David understood, everything that David ever had, was just as much Jonathan's, and the same for Jonathan. Everything he had was David's, even in the material realm, in the things, in the possessions. Now, they didn't go through all these steps that we go through now. If you're going to be in a multi-person ownership of property now, everybody has to go down and put everybody's name on the title, and everybody's name on the deed, and everybody's name on the mortgage, and all that. And because we don't differentiate between covenant and contract. Most of the time, even if you go into these, it's very common back in the Midwest and back in the Eastern United States, where when you enter into covenant with your homeowners association, or you enter into covenant with the state or the county or whatever, and they have these covenants that are there, and really these are just ordinances, and you're binding yourself to those ordinances, but it's really just a contractual thing. The covenant aspect does not require legal documentation. It's the commitment of you, and let me say this as clearly as I can, it's the commitment of your soul to another person. And God shows us this commitment and this level of commitment in the most beautiful way I know is in the marriage covenant. We don't have to have a legally binding document until what? No, it's not. You know, when your spouse dies, your marriage covenant's over. I'm talking about in our society now. I'm not talking about biblically. The only time that you have to have those legal documents now, really have to have them, is when you're going through a divorce. You have to prove to the court that you're married to each other, and then you have to go through all this stuff to dissolve the marriage.
Well, we wouldn't want anybody to take that wrong. We do have to have legal marriages in order to obey God's word. So put the legal documents.
Well, you're going down the wrong road there. And yes,
I see what she's saying.
I agree with what you're saying, and yes, but I'm trying to look at this from the aspect of covenant, where we enter into covenant before God with our spouse, and we don't. Our soul is knit to their soul, and it even in Scripture says two become one. And then you don't have to come up to your wife or come up to your husband and slap that marriage thing in his face and say, "Hey, look, you married me. You have to do this for me."
Wow, that's a great idea. Become my marriage license.
Marriage license for those vows.
Well, I can see that
You're not going to get to stay on the same.
No.
Maybe I should go back to the burrito.
Every once in a while we get one little rabbit gets loose, and today you opened up the whole coop and they're just all running out. Oh my.
Well, I want to ask a question.
Yes.
I'll throw another rabbit out with you. So, in the Old Testament, when the kings made a covenant like this, or when the king, like in Esther, when the king said that, they could kill all the Jews, and they can never go back on that. Is that a covenant?
It is.
They could never change it.
It is a type of covenant, yes, but it is more on the legal, contractual type of situation.
Rather than
No,
solid.
because it had a performance involved, but even when it turned around and they told Mordecai, you can tell the Jews they can arm themselves, but I can't change what I've already said.
Yep, that particular part of
Sorry
it.
to get on that rabbit.
No. That was more a decree
Yeah, that's what it's called.
more than it was a covenant. But it still has some covenant-ish aspects to it.
It was a one-way deal, though. The king decided and made that decree, and then no one else could say anything about it.
Even a king couldn't change it.
And one of the reasons that these types of decrees and these types of efforts for the law really go back to the fact that the children of Israel said, look, we want a king to take instead of God, because we want to be like everybody else. And so they willingly gave the king authority that was absolute. It was ultimate. And so when we're studying covenants, and we have to look at all the different aspects of covenant and the different interpretations of covenant, because ever since God made covenant with Noah, and there's been somebody come along trying to say that this covenant really wasn't this covenant really wasn't that. And now Abraham comes along, and look at all the efforts that have gone into destroying the covenant that Abraham made with God, and yet God said it was going to be there, it was going to go forward, and then he makes covenant with David, and it just the covenant. God made covenant with all these people, and God was saying, this is my soul, my spirit, and your soul, your spirit becoming one through covenant. But as we're going to see a little bit farther down the line here, God also has stipulations to being in covenant with Him. You can walk away from covenant even in the Old Testament. Ahab walked away from God's covenant. All those wicked kings walked away from God's covenant. And remember, he told him, he said, I'm going to wipe out, some of them he said, I'm going to wipe out you and all your children. There's never going to be a male in your lineage. It's going to disappear. Because they walked away from covenant. There are consequences to walking away from covenant. Old Testament, that's all we're talking about right now. Now, let's jump down to Nehemiah chapter 9. And I think we're going to launch in. Let's launch in about 7. Nehemiah, no, 9, chapter 9, verse 7. Nehemiah 9:7. Thou art the Lord the God, who didst choose Abram, and broughtest him forth out of Ur of the Chaldees, and gavest him the name Abraham. Verse 8. And foundest his heart faithful before thee, and made a covenant with him to give him the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Jebusites, Giggasites, to give it, I say, to his seed, and hast performed thy words, for thou art righteous. This particular scripture here, where the Nehemiah is making a reference back to what God promised, he's actually showing us that a part of the covenant that God made with Abraham included all of this land. And he names this by nation rather than by, and this is one of the places where we say, Israel is supposed to have a whole lot more property than they have right now. Because if this is read right, this goes all the way north to way past Samaria, maybe as far north as Turkey, all the way past to the area of all that we know as Egypt, all the way down to south to what would be now, what is, I can't think of those, it could go as far as almost Africa. You're talking about a third of the earth, of the known earth at that time, was what he said is his. A lot of territory.
That encompasses parts of North Africa for sure.
I think when we get into the like the Girgasites,
Yeah.
and some of those nations, the We know all of Persia through the Persians and the Jebusites, and then the Amorites, the Hittites, the Canaanites, all that north. This is just tremendous geographical space that is a part of the covenant. Now, this is my opinion, and I don't have any way to back this up, so if everybody doesn't understand what I'm saying, it's okay not to understand this, because this is just coming out from me. But I believe that one of the reasons that we don't see the great amount of property controlled and managed and taken care of course, is because the children of Israel kept backsliding, and they kept going to idol worship, and they kept intermarrying, they kept disobeying, and I believe that their dominion was reduced as a result of their breaking of covenant.
Yeah, but also Joshua complained to them because they had gone in, and the ones that were supposed to go north, I think it was north, they didn't go up there and take the land. They got all comfortable down here with their family members and their traveling companions, and they thought, well, that's just going to be hard. And I don't think they ever went and conquered.
I don't think they ever did under Josh, and it's just it's a long path there. But what I like about this is when God made covenant with man, with Abraham, it wasn't just a spiritual thing. We try to take everything and say, okay, this is the spiritual life that's me. Now this is the physical life that's me. We try all the time to put them in different camps. We are one being. We are one being. Everything that's physical and everything spiritual, we are one being. Look at all the people that are making a killing today off these multiple personality things that they're doing. You know, I was, you know, sometimes I get zombied out in front of the television, and I just forget about everything. It helped me unhook, really does. And there was this whodunit, and they were trying to figure out who had committed this murder or whatever it was, and it turned out that their prime witness was a person that had multiple personalities, and it was actually them that had committed all these crimes, only they were the witness, because they'd be little sweet with and all the stuff to report, and then they get in a different situation, they take on another personality, and they were wicked, they were mean, they were ugly, and all that. I got so confused. I got so confused. And I thought, you know, that's exactly what the devil's trying to do to us. He's trying to make us think that we can be this good spiritual moral person and have in our spirit, but then we can do whatever we want in our flesh because we don't even need the flesh. God's going to give us new flesh later anyway. And unfortunately, a lot of people are even unknowingly, they are just flowing with that kind of a doctrinal thing, that kind of a mindset. And, you know, I made a comment not too long ago about, I actually heard a minister state in his broadcast that everybody goes to heaven. Everybody, and I mentioned it. And so I got a lot of feedback from me mentioning that. And I have been, again, a little bit shocked at how many people actually believe that there's going to be some miraculous aspect of grace that covers all of your sin that you ever could commit, so that even if you die an axe murderer or something like that, you're still going to end up in heaven. And they believe that all of these wicked characters all through history, they even, and I just ask that, so you believe that ultimately, when it's all settled, God's going to forgive Lucifer and Lucifer's going to be with us in eternity? Well, I know, but people, see, people take this idea that they can live any kind of life they want as long as their heart's right.
Then how do they reconcile that with Christ's death on the cross?
Well, they are devoid of the understanding of what the cross really represents.
In their minds, that's done and over with. That wasn't for them. It just,
And some of the people that we minister to, that this church ministers to, have not been in God's Word enough to even know the basics of what salvation really is and what salvation really requires of us.
Well, and some think that the death of Jesus' death and resurrection covered all sins of everybody, past, present, and
Past,
future,
present.
and that's why they're going all going to heaven.
And that is that Epicurean approach that, doesn't matter which God you serve, because they're all one. Doesn't matter what you believe, as long as you believe in all. And see, these doctrines have been around, and in our generation, they have found the most fertile ground they've ever found.
That whole theory of my heart's right.
Yes.
That is, which we're studying, did you start with that?
No, that's next
Well, I'm
time.
studying.
Yeah.
It will start next week. Anyway, in Ecclesiastes, Solomon says, he says things, I can't quote it exactly, but he talked to his own self. He worked it out in his own mind. Well, when we're measuring our heart being right with God, we have to measure it against this,
Yes.
not against this.
yeah.
Because if this doesn't have enough of this in it, then our heart can't be right.
And so God is telling us here through this scripture in Nehemiah that when I enter into covenant with you or with anyone, they enter into covenant with me. It includes every aspect of their life. It includes their physical possessions. It includes their physical habits. It includes their attitudes. It includes everything.
People use that, God knows my heart is right. If your heart is right, you'll do what's right.
And we try to tell people that, and it even comes to details that are so small and so minute. God cares about everything, and God wants you to be in covenant with Him in everything, not just the things that fit your doctrine or fit your lifestyle or even fit your education.
But there's so many people today, and I have talked to several that think the book is no longer relevant.
Oh,
It blows me away sometimes. But if this isn't relevant, then why are we here?
well,
And trying to tell them why I'm coming to church and what I believe, and they go, well, you're as backwards as Arkansas.
see, think about it.
That's what they say.
Think about it now. Isn't that the same thing that Satan planted into Eve's mind in the garden? Don't believe God's word. Don't believe what God says. What He says is not relevant to the truth. That's what Satan lied to her about. That's what he conned her with. He deceived her. You know, a con artist is just a professional deceiver. That's all they are. They're just professional deceivers. And they use all the tools necessary. Well, Satan, I've even been invited to seminars that are how to be Christian in a post-church era. There are already leaders in the Christian world, especially in America, that actually believe that the church, is no longer a relevant factor in our society. And so they're giving us seminars on how to adapt and reach the millennials and how to adapt and reach the yuppies, or whatever name you want to put on them. I know yuppies is an old term, but yuppie. Yeah, Sister Nancy and I were having that conversation the other day, and I realized that a lot of the words that I use in my vocabulary are ancient.
That's because you're not relevant.
There we go. There goes another one of them rabbits. Somebody get this stew pot. Oh my. Let's jump down into the book of Psalms real quick. Book of Psalms. Let's start with Psalms 25. Psalm 25. Unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. O my God, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed. Let them be ashamed which transgress without cause. Show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy paths. David here is just reaching out in every way to communicate what's in his spirit, what's in his soul, to God. The English translation here, where he uses this word let, he said let not. It means don't allow when it's let not. So often when I'm praying, I try to be careful on how I use the word let. Because sometimes I'll say, let this be or let this happen, God, when it's already something God has promised in His Word. It's already something that God has said is up to me to achieve or me to establish. But in verse 10 of that, he says, all the paths of the Lord are mercy and truth unto such as keep His covenant and His testimonies. See, mercy comes, and mercy is available to everybody. But just because something's available doesn't mean that people avail themselves of it. So often we'll have, every so often we'll have somebody call the church and they'll say, I need some groceries. Or I need something. I say, well, go up to the Methodist church on Wednesday. We have a food pantry up there. Many of the churches in this area work together and
We had one person today, in all that storm last week,
it's but I've had them actually say, well, don't you have anything at your church? Can't you bring me something right now? And I'll say, this is available every week. Why aren't you going up there and taking advantage of it? And you wouldn't believe, I get some of the most absurd excuses you've ever seen. Well, that's sometimes that's the case, but not very often. Usually people that want money from the church just come right out and ask for money nowadays. It's just a situation where I try to make them aware of what's available to them. But then a lot of times, even though things are available to people, they won't go get it. They won't make any effort whatsoever. one of the individuals, I asked, I said, well, why don't you just go up there? And he said, well, he said, I went up there once and they just wanted to give me just a box of groceries, and I wanted to go in there and pick what I liked and what I didn't like. And I said, oh, well, I said, it's not a grocery store. It's a food pantry. And all the churches in this area, we actually raise the money to buy that food and have it there available. And we I don't say we go to great expense, but there's an expense involved, so that and then that's not to mention, you know, the Methodist Church is out a pretty good penny just keeping the facilities up and the freezers and refrigerators running, and the what? Yeah, 15 years, long time. I didn't realize we'd been doing it that long. I just didn't realize it. But I think God wants us to understand that even when it comes to mercy and truth, we have to keep His covenant. No, it says covenant and His testimonies. Now, what do you think it's referring to here in this text when it says His testimonies?
Results of the covenant.
Well, the results of the covenant are certainly testimonies, yes. Have you ever met somebody that they had a testimony and they wanted to share their testimony? And we have been blessed how many times because of somebody's testimony and what God has done. Well, a part of what he's referring to here in Psalms, what David's referring to, it's the testimonies of the forefathers. It's the testimonies of the righteous, the testimonies of the people who walked through the Red Sea.
Those are God's testimonies.
Those are God's testimonies. That's just it. That's where I was going. This is His testimonies. Look, this is what God says He's going to do when you keep His covenant. Here's the proof. Here's the testimony of it.
Amen.
Oh, I get excited when I think about it. And then I get in a situation where, as you may know, here for the past few months, couple of years really, things have been tough on everybody. And just things happening. And so every great once in a while, I don't even know if I want to admit this, but I get a little discouraged. I just get a little discouraged. It's not that I'm going to quit or and I don't. I hope that discouragement is not some level of fear, but here lately, when that phone rings and I look down and I don't recognize the name. Used to be I thought, they're trying to sell me something, But boy, here lately it hasn't been that way. Brother Bill so-and-so's passed. Brother Bill so-and-so's got it. And it's just, and so I'm thinking, sometimes I look down and I go, oh, what now? And I shouldn't think that way. I shouldn't feel, because it doesn't matter what's there. God's the same. His testimony is He did it once and He'll do it again. What's that old song?
We'll read a psalm of David where we know he's downtrodden.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll read a psalm of David where he, like, created me a clean heart, O Lord. He's struggling with his own failure, his own humanness. And then the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That's a different psalm. So you're no different in the battle than David was.
Well, and I the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's when I forget about God's testimonies that I can get discouraged or I can get a little bit, I still remember the times when my discouragement had kind of grown into depression. And what kind of a testimony is that for my life of faith if I'm going to let the things that are happening now shadow what God is and what God can do so much that I'm only thinking about me. I'm only focused on how I feel and how much it's hurting me, how much it bothered me, how nervous I am, or how anxious I am, or whatever. And He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And His testimonies, we keep His covenant, and we keep those testimonies alive. Somebody asked me one time, said, how many? I was preaching some sermons, a series of sermons about the blood, and somebody asked me, said, well, how many more times are you going to preach on the blood? And I said, I don't know, but I imagine from time to time that's something I never stop preaching about, because it's the application to our lives of this free gift of God. We need it. So David's telling us here, look, this walk, you're going to keep my covenant, but keep my testimonies. Keep a hold of what you know God is and what God wants to be, and like I've been, the I am, the I will, and the I can, because God can and will, and He's everything to us. Amen. Now let's go to Psalm 44. Now, I'm not going to read a whole bunch of that because we're running out of time again. But Psalm 44, let's jump in verse number 17. I'll use several verses here on this one. This is really rich. Psalm 44, 17. All this is come upon us, yet have we not forsaken thee, neither have we dealt falsely in thy covenant. Our heart is not turned back, neither have our steps declined from thy way. Though thou hast sore broken us in the place of dragons, and covered us with the shadow of death, if we have forgotten the name of our God, stretched out our hands to a strange God. The children of Israel had this basic human trait. And I believe God put it in the Bible so that we could see it and recognize it. And see how some of that is just the humanness that we all deal with. He says, we've not dealt falsely with your covenant. This particular psalm is a psalm that was made by one of the chief musicians. He was one of the Levites, probably, would be a category we would understand. But he was one of the chief Levites, and he wrote this psalm. And they would sing these, and they would put them to music so that people could memorize them, and people could receive them. And how many times do we have a hymn or a chorus or something that we sing that reminds us or lifts us up or encourages us or brings or even states our doctrines and what we believe in God? We just sang Amazing Grace, a hymn that gives us the knowledge of what grace is and what grace is for us. And we can be in a situation where maybe maybe we're in a place of discouragement, but the psalm, the hymn will lift us up. Same way with these psalms that they used. They used them as they were ministry and worship items, tools, blessings. In this particular approach, as he said, look, we didn't turn back. Our steps are not behind, decline from the even though you broke us sore in the place of dragons, and covered us with a shadow of death. You know, sometimes going through the difficult places, even the places where there's wickedness present, we need to remember whose we are and who our covenant is based in. See, I tell people quite often, they'll ask me what denomination we are. And I said, well, we're not a denomination. We're a fellowship. We don't have a set doctrinal standard that we work on and change. And we're using the same 16 fundamental truths right now in the Assemblies of God, but they're the fundamental truths of our fellowship. We fellowship with each other willingly, by choice. It's even, and I can give you a perfect example. This building does not belong to the Assemblies of God. It doesn't belong to the district. It doesn't belong to the section. It belongs to the adult voting members, and it's transacted. The property is transacted through the trustees, which are your deacons/trustees, for the legal aspect of it. But if let's say, for instance, Elm Grove ceased to exist, what happens to the property? Well, according to our cooperative fellowship that we have it right in our constitution and bylaws of this church that the property would be disposed of and the funds would be put into the ministry somewhere, and preferably in something affiliated with the Assemblies of God, since that's who we're identifying with. But, you know, people don't understand that. People think that, well, it's a religion, so it's a doctrine. Well, did you know that there's not anything in this world that's not religious? There's not anything in this world that's not religious. Some people are just religious about football. Some people are just religious about their jobs. All religion is a quotation marks containing who and what you are. That's all religion is. But see, because of the effectiveness of Satan to try and make people think that there's something wrong with religion, or there's something wrong with doctrine, or there's something wrong with the church, all he's trying to do is desensitize people or make them overly sensitive to something that really doesn't even exist. You know, I was told just, you know, back during the last political election cycle, I was told that I was the most dangerous human being and the most hated human being on the face of the earth. I said, why? Well, you're white, you're a man, you're a Christian, you're from the South. No, they didn't put the old in there. Thank you very much.
But they usually say old white men.
Well, yeah, they do. Well, you white women are in better shape, but you're still enemies of America. All white people are enemies of America. That's that rhetoric.
Now, if you live in rural America, you don't have internet or a way to get to a copy machine or anything.
Yeah, I know.
You live out here, you just walk out and get going. Where in America can you not get to a copy machine?
Yeah, this debate that's we're fixing to see it all come around again about voting and registering and all this stuff. You know, they're all the time saying, well, these people are disenfranchised if they have to have a picture ID. And I said, because they're poor, they can't do this. I said, isn't it amazing how all these poor people that can't go get their identification and have it set up so that they can vote legally? Every one of them's got a cell phone. Every one of them's got internet. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that argument doesn't hold me. I don't know how I got off.
Another rabbit, I'm sorry, I didn't
Well, okay. Here in this place where he was talking about how you can be in this bad place, the shadow of death, and if we have forgotten the name of our God or stretch out our hands towards strangers, I said, you know, God, basically, you're there and you're the same. So I could spend a whole month just in this one song, because there's so many things that are currently being distorted in our society about who God is and about what it is to be a Christian. What it is to be a Christian.
And the rest of that thought, and I don't know how I've got my one again, I've been very also on that King James, but it says, if we've forgotten the name of our God or stretched out our hands to a strange God, will not God search this out? For he knows the secrets of the heart. And that goes back to that heart statement you made earlier.
And that's one of the reasons that I was thinking about, you know, how far are we going to drift away from God in our attitudes and think that we can be in covenant and have the wrong attitude.
God searches out our heart.
He stretches. He searches it. He picks it. He prods it. And he finds every little thing that you think you've got hidden. So we have to decide, in this covenant approach, are we going to give ourselves completely to God, body, mind, and spirit? If we do, then we can't go running around here using worldly solutions to our problems. Now, we've run over a little bit tonight, but that's not too uncommon. But thank you for being here, and thank all of you that are online and all of you that are going to watch it on YouTube. We're being blessed and blessed. I've actually received 3 phone calls this week of people that found our church from our website, and I'm believing that we're going to have some visitors this week.